Hello, my name is Tim, and in this video I will be talking about arrays. So why are arrays important? Well, when programmers are dealing with sets of data, it is really hard and inconvenient to store those data in variables because you have to create lots of individual variables. The simple solution to this hectic problem will be using an array. Arrays are very special compared to other data types because it can hold more than one values at a time. Now let's look at the structure of an array. Okay, so this is an array that I drew in using using graphics, and this is what basically an array is. It is a set of data you can see right here, and then it has an individual index to it. So I would like to think about arrays like a train, right? And you have the head of the train, and then each data after it is like the parts of the train, and then each parts of the train contains a data, and they're all connected sort of. So you can see right here the first slot of the array has a data of 23, and the second slot has a 5, and each slot after that also have its own data, and also each slot has its own index, and the index starts from 0. It does not start from 1. It's really important to remember that arrays, the first index starts at 0, and the length is one more than the last index, which is 7 right here, and then the total length of this array will be 8. So how would you declare an array? Well, this is how you declare an array. You start with the data type, right? But then you have to add 2 brackets and then space with the variable name that you want this array to be. And to initialize the array, you will have to either put in data, or you just initialize it by stating the length of the array. So you can look right here. It says that method 1, well, this is the method 1, and then to create an array, you will have to use curly brackets and put the data inside. Generally, I don't use this method. Method 1 is like, I rarely use it, and then most likely you will be using method 2, which is creating an array and then create a new string with a number. You see the number within these 2 brackets, the number indicating the length of the array. You always have to set the length of the array in order for the array to be created. And array, is important to remember that array have a set amount of slots, so you cannot add more slots to it or take away slots from it. So when you initialize the array with the length, it will automatically generate these slots in your memory, and then you cannot like add more memory slot into the array. If you want to add more memory slot, like add more data into the array to make the length longer, you have to use a different data type called array list, and I will talk about array list in the other episode. So now I'm going to implement an arrays example in code, so you will get a clear view at what is an array. So let's start off by making a string array. String array. Now this is how you declare an array in code. And now let's do okay, so now let's start off by creating a string array, and we're gonna start declaring it first. And this is how you declare a string array. And now let's use method 1 to initialize it with some value. So we have to use the curly brackets, and let's say our first one will be I, and then the second will be like, third one will be I don't know, food, and we can end it with the curly brackets. So this is how you would initialize a string array using method 1, and we can print out the array by just calling array and then brackets, and we can put the index of the element into those brackets so that it would print out element at index 0. And let's do this 3 times for each element. 0, 1, 2, and let's see how it will print it out. I like food. Well, maybe we should have used print line because we want them to be on the same line, don't we? So let's do it this. I like food. Okay, so now let's get to method 2, which is, I believe, more common than method 1. And method 2, well, let's start with an integer array. Integer array equals new integer, and let's make a size of 4. So we want to add element into this array. There's a good trick to use with array is that arrays are really good with for loops. Like, they're almost like born for each other. And as you do more coding, you will see why. And let's start off. So this is our game plan. We want to create an array that start with a number start of 0, and then it increases by 1. And we can do that using a for loop. And let's declare a for loop. And we want to not loop more than itself, or else it's gonna throw a index out of bound exceptions. And I'll show you what the exception looks like in a second. So okay, so what we would do is that we have to, so right now this array has no value in it. There has no element, and in all this memory slot, the element inside will be null, so it will be nothing in it. And so what we have to add value in it. So what we can do is that we can set we can do this. So what this does is that when the program runs for the first time, it was at 0 to index 0, and when it loops, and then I increases, then it will add 1 to index 1, 2 to index 2, 3 to index 3, so on and so on. And so right now, if you run this, we won't see anything because we're just adding value. What we can do, we can print it out the values so we can see what is inside. So by the way, this dot length is how you get the dot length returns the number of slots inside our array. It's really useful. So what we do now is that we just print out the each element in the array. So we just do I. So it starts to 0 and it increases, so it prints out everything. So let's run it. 0, 1, 2, 3. And I was talking about index out of bound exception, and this is what I meant by that. So if you, instead of doing less than, you do equals to, that means that it's gonna loop one more, and it's gonna loop to, it's gonna hypothetically goes to slot 5, which it doesn't exist, and it's gonna throw an index out of bound exception, and you will see why. So this is index out of bound exception. So I mean index 5. I didn't mean index 5. I mean index 4. So the index 4, since all array starts 0, index 4 will be one more than index 3, which is the last index of the array. So it will throw an index out of bound exception. So when you see this error comes up, that means that one of your arrays are out of bound, and it tells you that right here, line 9 is where it goes out of bound. So it's really useful to know this exception because it saves you a lot of frustration and time when you're debugging, and you get a lot of useful information by looking at an exception like this. So yeah, and this is pretty much about array, and Obviously, there's more to array, but you can explore on that on your own. And this is basically how you would introduce you into the concept of array. And thanks for watching the video, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.